Hello YouTube, this is Sam Gerrans from Qur'an.com. Today is Monday 24th of July 2017, and today is just a few sort of notes really about, well, I suppose in some ways connected with things I've been going through, but I thought might be of a more general interest. So it's the subject is the lot of the believer, and maybe to some extent what being a believer is, and perhaps what it isn't so much. Just to say that I've been out of action for the last week, 10 days. I had a case of food poisoning, which kind of put me on my back for a while, but I'm gently getting back into things. I don't want to go into the details of my own personal life because it's not really germane so much to what I want to talk about, but I think some of the conclusions or things that I've been thinking about may be of a wider interest. We tend to think in Quranic terms that the believers, al-mu'minun, that this is a lot of people, and that assumption is somewhat compounded by especially the society that we live in now, where we all feel that, put it this way, we're indoctrinated into the idea of democracy. Now, democracy is a moving target. Democracy doesn't really mean anything more than Islam means. It's just a kind of meta coverall brand name that can, the contents of which can be swapped and changed depending on whatever the agenda happens to be. But within the idea of democracy, within the brand of democracy, is the underpinning that is the idea that basically the more people who agree with one, the more people who think something, the more likely it is to be true. Nothing could be further from the case, and this is anathema to what we read in the Qur'an. Of course, and my main task here is not to sort of bang on about the traditionalists. I'm not really against them. I'm not even particularly interested in them. But what's interesting is that they have constructed a mythology, which is that the majority of the believers will never believe a wrong thing. Now, this isn't anywhere found in the Qur'an. The Qur'an says actually not the complete opposite, but something which is at unambiguous variance with this idea, which is that if you follow the majority of mankind, you will go astray. So this is something which the Qur'an tells us, and I'm going to get into a little bit more about this. I get a lot of messages, or people say, "Oh, Sam, if you did it this way, if you do it that way," I get loads of advice. Believe me, I get tons and tons and tons of advice from people who, don't do anything themselves, but their contribution is telling me how to do things better. So what they will say, or they'll say all kinds of things. They don't obviously put any money up or put any time in or do anything, but they've got this great advice thing going, which is that if I make it simpler or more shiny or more spangly or more something, it will appeal to more people. I touched on in one of my last videos, in fact I think the last video where I'm speaking rather than the audio of the recital that I'm working my way through, that it's not about numbers, and I stand by that. It really isn't about numbers. If you look at the Qur'an, I mean, it's very nice if people like what you're doing and all of that. It's nice, it's pleasant, but historically it's not commonplace. Now, I'm not setting out to make what I do obscure or difficult, but what I do is geared toward people like myself, people who are native English speakers with a full command of the English language, and who are interested enough to think that they think that the message from the Creator of the heavens and the earth is something worth looking at, worth studying, and putting time and effort into. And those are the people that I'm interested in. Outside of that, okay, fine. But I just want to address the sort of the popularity idea as regards believers, that, by making everything more accessible and more, perhaps more fun, perhaps creating an app, or something, that, I'd have more numbers. I'm sure they're right. I'm sure in some way they're right. But what I try to do is to make my work as comprehensive as possible, for the people intelligent enough and serious-minded enough to work their way through it. And perhaps they can, break it down into bite-sized chunks and cover it with chocolate for people who, haven't got the attention span. But I don't, you can just read 1 or 2 verses from the Qur'an and benefit from it. You don't need to understand everything that I've done. You don't need to understand the muqaṭṭaʿāt. You don't need to understand pantextual analysis. You don't need to understand those things to be righteous or to be a believer. What I've done is I've reverse engineered, I've sort of unpicked the religion of Islam by reverse engineering its imposition upon the Qur'an with its extraneous or its external, its non-Quranic literature. But this isn't something you can just, have an opinion on. And this is going to be quite difficult to grasp, but you can't. I know people think that having an opinion, it's just like, oh, I have an opinion about this. There are things that you really have to study to understand. If I get onto an airliner, a Boeing 747, I don't care what anybody else's opinion is on this plane, except the pilots. I'm not interested. I'm not taking a vote. It's not something I'm going to get very excited about. We can all Twitter and etc. as much as we like. I want the guy with the 3,000 hours flight time who's done the equivalent of a degree in this, and this is what he does all day long. I want his opinion. If he says don't take off, I'm not taking off. If he says take off, let's take off. It's not 100% guarantee, but that's where I'm putting my money. Now, when I looked at what had happened with the Qur'an, I didn't start off by thinking, I must, dig into this and do this and do that. No, I just looked at what there was and realized they don't know. They haven't got it. They haven't got it. And if somebody else had really explained things, I'd be quite happy to go with that. But I only did what I did because that didn't exist. But the second part of why I've done this work is because I think that in some ways I wanted to help people who are also believers. Now, when I use the word believer, I'm not talking perhaps in the same way as most people. I'm not talking about a religion. I'm talking about people whose fundamental spiritual DNA is of a type. It has a particular polarity, a particular charge. And if you are created in this way, there are things that you will have a natural disinclination towards. You're going to find lies and the people who deal in lies difficult, if not impossible, to deal with. You're going to find people who compromise for money and compromise for this, that, and the other, somewhat disappointing. You're going to find that when you look at people who've got lots of money and all the rest of it, that there's something missing, there's something empty. You're going to find that you're the only guy at the party who isn't having a good time. Well, that was me. I was the guy at the party not having a good time because I couldn't help but see that this is empty. And all through my life, I was told, oh, don't think so much. Oh, don't worry about this. Oh, don't worry about that. Why can't you just get with the program? And you get it from family, you get it in your education, you get it all the way through your life. If you have this, the chances are you're one of the people that I'm talking about. You're a believer. It's not something you subscribe to. In some ways, to be perfectly honest, for me, it's something you acknowledge, not exactly acknowledge, but if there'd been a button I could have pressed in my life to sort of become like everyone else appears to be, I'd have pressed it. I think it's something you come to unwillingly, because, looking at it certainly in a very short-term way, there's nothing but pain. Conversation seems entirely superfluous, insipid, pointless, shallow. What other people are running after seems likewise. I mean, I had this in spades. One person that I worked for, I think he had at the time $19 billion. I don't quite know where he kept it, but I won't say he was a miserable person, but he wasn't 19 billion times happier than I was. He wasn't even as happy as I was. This whole thing, when you kind of push through it, you realize how shallow it is. But if you are this is a sort of a sign of being a believer. And I think that a lot of believers, and especially in this time, are going to be people who are prone to depression, prone to drug abuse, prone to all kinds of abuse, because the society that we're living in is actually, you may have noticed, it's psychopathic and criminally insane. So if you are happy with it, if it kind of feels fine with you and you're all right with it, if you don't smell a rat in this somewhere, then you're just very different to how I am. So going back to, I've got a few notes here, which is why I'm glancing down. So one of the reasons I've been doing this, apart from wanting to solve the Qur'an sort of puzzle, if you like, is for other believers, other people who just know that this is wrong. They just, we can sort of go through it, chemtrails and this, the vaccinations, the education system. By the time you've been through the vaccinations and 12 years of education, you've had, I suppose, the equivalent of an intellectual lobotomy. It's not that I'm surprised that there are people who see and there are people who are awake. I'm just surprised that there are so many of them. I mean, it seems like there are so few, and there are few, but why are there any after what we've all been through? It's a bit like the abortion trade, I suppose, a big correct word for baby killing. The horrors that they do. Some children, some babies survive this process. Well, this is what they're trying to do to all of us. And from a lot of people, look around you, you'll see that it works. But what I'm trying to get to, my point, I suppose, is that believers are people who don't buy it. If you look through the Qur'an, I've got a verse here. I've got a couple of verses I'd like to share with you. This is 51 and 55. And it says, "But remind thou, for the reminder profits the believers." Now, who does it profit? It only profits the believers. And whilst the traditionalist likes to conflate, sort of mix together and confuse the terminology that he uses, so that by al-mu'minun he means only people who believe in one of the religions called Islam. From the Quranic usage, we find that a believer there is no one-to-one parity in that at all. There have been believers all the way through many times, and actually it says that only the Prophet Muhammad can only reach only the believers will hear. So this isn't something that he does to other people, but you're kind of born this way or you're not. Now, I've touched on this with other videos, but I also go into it in great depth in my work. If you look at the notes to Al-Baqarah, the beginning of Al-Baqarah, starting sort of, verse about 6 or 8 or something, going through to verse 20, you'll see that the Quran has particular definitions of particular kinds of people, and we included in that we find those who do not believe, and later we find people who do believe. We find that the Quran actually defines who these people are. You can become a believer, certainly, but there is no one-to-one correlation. I'm not sort of going to wax California on you or anything, but there is no one-to-one correlation between being a believer and being a member of a religion. There are many, 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 many people in religions who don't believe at all, not according to the Quranic definitions. So I think what I wanted to touch on was the fact that if you are a believer, and if you are, great, but if you're not, this isn't sort of some sort of black mark against you. It's, as far as I understand it, Quranically, you just are or you're not. If God loves you, if God wants you to become a believer, you'll start having a hunger for God. That's kind of the way it works. But and how God chooses and how that works, I have no idea, and I won't pretend to. But I do know there are people who incline toward God. They are hungry for the things of God, and there are people who just simply don't. Why that? There are people who have dark hair, and people who have ginger hair. Why this is the case, I have no idea, and I'm not going to pretend to know something I don't know. I don't know why it is. I don't know why, but I do know something of what. And I think where I wanted to go with this is, if you are, in a way, you are alienated from the world. And that's going to include your family. It's going to include, well, actually everybody. Now, the Qur'an says, here's just a verse that I've read and pondered. It's 3:28. Let not the believers take as allies those who spurn guidance while claiming virtue, rather than believers. So, you and I, those of us who are believers, we are only to take as friends, as protecting friends, as allies, other believers. But look around you. How many believers? I'm not talking about people who pay lip service to religion. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about believers, because the Qur'an has got very specific definitions about believers. These are people who set aside everything. Anyway, we'll get to some of this in a minute. And whoso does that is not of God in anything, save that you be in prudent fear among them of a threat. So outside of other real believers, it doesn't matter who you're with, your family, at work, you can obviously be honest and straight with people, but they're not your friends. It's a really hard thing for people to get. The verse continues, and God warns you of himself, and to God is the journey's end. So something that's just been in my mind a lot, and some of the things that I've tried to complete on, one of them being meetquranites.com, for example, to provide a place for people who identify, I'm sure we all have a nicely triggered by that word, but for people who I quote unquote identify as Quran alone Muslims, where they can meet and make contact with a view to being connected in the real world. Because this is a very lonely place to be. If you look around at what's happening in the world with the advancement and the propagandizing, the promulgation of complete insanity, you can start to question yourself. And I'm trying to sort of weave this topic in with the other part, which is, it says in the Quran to Muhammad, they said, if they want you to compromise. So if you compromise, they'll compromise. You're going to get this a lot. And I get messages, Sam, if you didn't talk about this and you didn't talk about that and this bit and that bit, and I'm not going to do that. And there are several reasons why. Number one, my integrity is worth more to me than that. But number two, if one is going to be, attacked physically and put oneself in danger physically from either the Ahmed, the knife-wielding lunatic, or equally likely, probably more likely, Mossad, one of the alphabet, agencies. They spent a long time creating this religion. They don't want people coming along and unpicking it. If that happens, then what I have is I have the consolation of knowing that I said what I actually think. And there are people who come on and big on advice again. That I shouldn't mention this or I shouldn't mention that. No, I'm going to stick with this. And also the last point would be is that people aren't going to like you anyway. If you've never stood up and spoken out, publicly and risked your career and all the rest of it to do something, believe me, you will not please people anyway, including your own family, including who you thought you were friends. So you may as well, and this isn't exactly advice, but I'm just sharing my experience. You may as well come out and say it as you see it, because the world is never satisfied, right? Never. So, you please God, right? And let the chips fall where they may. Now, I get people who write to me and they say, "Oh, but if I follow, I'm afraid my family won't like me, or this, that." I've pretty much lost everyone. Okay. My background, if I come from a liberal, highly indoctrinated background, and I love my family, but they're heavily invested in the lies, and they just are. It doesn't mean they're exactly bad people. They're not, and of course I love them and all the rest of it, but it is what it is. And if we look to the Qur'an for our guidance, we see, for example, with Ibrahim, that he refused to worship the idols. And modern idols are things like, multiculturalism, gender diversity, all this, enforced tolerance about everything. And of course, some of it sounds nice, and some of it is reasonable, in a kind of a way. Of course, it's not obviously, certainly to begin with, gross depravity and perversion, but it becomes that. And those people are followers. I'm not just talking about my family, I'm talking just in general. Most of the people that you meet, they want to compromise. They want to feel safe. That's what they want. They want to feel safe. And I understand, I want to feel safe too. But it's a matter of where you find your safety. And when you finally realize that there is no safety, as the Qur'an says, excepting in God and the communication of his messages. That's it. There is no other safety. I'll repeat the part of this verse. Let not the believers take as allies. And then it goes on. Those who spurn guidance while claiming virtue, al-kafirun, rather than the believers. So when you look around for believers, what do you see? Not very many. And because we are indoctrinated with this, going back to my opening statement about this democratic idea, it's very easy to feel downcast. I feel it too. I have felt it too. I've kind of been through it's a difficult one to internalize when you realize that you are on your own, But there's a freedom that comes with this as well. I think this is what I'm trying to say, is that we are indoctrinated with this idea that numbers are the thing, and you'll get a lot of people sending you advice or some sort of empty kind of encouragement, inshallah, but do nothing. This is par for the course, and what I'm trying to get to. So I'm sort of teasing out my point from this web of words. If you look to the Qur'an, and this is not dependent upon my translation, go to your favorite, mullah's translation and read Surah 7, for example, or just read anywhere. You'll get to it sooner or later. You'll find that it's small numbers, usually one or two people, who stand up and warn the elite of the day. whether it's Ad, Thamud, Al Fir'aun, Yunus. This is the model. So the believers are few. This is what I'm trying to get to, and this is really why I opened meetquranites.com. And you don't have to, accept what, it's not for supporters of Sam Garen's exactly, although, why not? If there are people there who do like what I've done, that's great, but that isn't, why I've done it. If you identify as a Quran alone believer, then it's for you to meet potentially other believers, because we need to understand that there are not very many. And if you look, for those of you who've downloaded or bought my book, you'll see that it's dedicated to the few, and it's hard to realize that this is correct. Even I understand it intellectually, and it's still difficult to internalize this. But it's going to be the same for you. This is why I'm talking about this. It's that I'm trying to reach those people who, beyond just, sort of idea tourists. I'm talking for the people who genuinely, have taqwa and genuinely want to serve God. You are going to find it tough. This is what I'm trying to say. It's not that something's gone wrong, that your family won't talk to you or whatever. This is kind of how it works. It's only those people for whom God alone is sufficient, and all idols have to be abandoned, including those of religion, of thinking that you will have support from men, of cultural support, family support, all these other things. This is not an aberration. It's not that something's gone wrong in the system. And this is primarily why, when I looked at how churches worked, looking at the sort of the popularist model, why I'm not going to go that route. Because retaining integrity and retaining, what one understands to be the true message of the Qur'an, this is going to become, it already is, but it's going to become more difficult given the society which is hell-bent on perversion and depravity of all kinds. What I notice, what I observe is that it's splitting. And I'm not talking about Islam, not Islam, Christians and Jews. No, I mean actually people who genuinely follow scripture and those who don't. And this division, this furqan, is going to become more and more pronounced. And it starts now. And I do not say, and I don't recommend that anybody set out to be at odds with anybody. Do the best you can to retain good friendships and good relationships and with everyone if that's possible, and be honest in your dealings. However, there is going to come a point where you have to choose, and we've made our choice. And it will require a decision that you make yourself. There's no way around it. I can't make it for you. And, but if you start to think that hardship is indication of failure, then you're finished before you begin. So I want to read a couple of verses that I've chosen. Here's another one. Yes. 9:16. If you think that you will be left when God knows not those who strive among you and have taken besides God and his messenger and the believers no confidant, And there's ellipsis here, which I take to mean then you are mistaken, to continue, and God is aware of what you do. So it is, a fundamentalist, fundamental Quranism, if you want to use that word, or taking scripture at a fundamental level. This isn't a bolt-on. They're busy in the West trying to redefine Islam, gay Islam, and this Islam, and whatever kind of Islam and chips. The Qur'an says what it says, and you can follow it, or you can't, or not follow it. But creating a bolt-on religion, which is some sort of pointless tithe on your time and your money, I don't see the point. And sort of trying to make God a partner in what you're doing rather than serving God alone. That's not for me, and I don't recommend it. And I'll tell you why: because you lose this world and the hereafter. If you want to serve this world, serve it. Don't mess about. But half measures, I don't see the point. Most people you meet are brainwashed, or most people I meet are, and along with that comes criticism. So if you're going to fold when you get that criticism, you just need to learn how to take it, and it's not pleasant. As Elvis Presley used to say, if you cut me, I bleed. It's not pleasant, but the fires of hell are a lot less pleasant. So it's not that, for example, for myself, that I set out to antagonize people, but antagonizing people is a part of what happens when you speak your truth without any compromise. And you get the people on the one hand who, if you just toned it down, and if you just didn't talk about this, and blah 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 blah, you get those people. And then you get the people who wade in and have got a lot of expletives they want to tell you about, and how much they want to kill you, and what a terrible and evil person you are. Or maybe they have that on there as well, but generally I don't read that far. But you get those people as well. What distinguishes a believer is that they care about God first. They have taqwa, and taqwa is when you have a choice, doing what the Qur'an says. That's really, I've thought about taqwa a lot recently. It's accessing the Quranic programming when you are in decision mode. That's what taqwa is. It's not, walking around with some face like, I don't know, sort of ever so meek or something. No, it's that you base your decisions on Quranic imperatives. From a Quranic point of view, that's taqwa. But you're not going to be popular. And this has been, it's a difficult thing, because we tend to equate popularity with success. Look at the people who've got lots. Elon Musk, just sold himself, for a mess of pottage. Any of these people, what are they called? The Hollywood, I don't know who they are anymore, because it's just, I can't actually listen to it. It makes me feel sick. But all of that lot of people, it comes at a price, and I would say it's not worth it. They can't keep it. It's a bad investment from my perspective. But if they're not believers in the true sense of the word, I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but they're not going to get it anyway. So they might as well have 15 minutes of fame, or whatever it is they think they've got. They can't keep it. And actually, what you find with the shaitan, when he promises you something, he never lets you have it, not fully, not actually. He always wants more, because he needs you culpable. It's just how it works. It's an immutable law. So popularity, yes, you're right. Those people write to me and say, if you did this and if you did that and you compromised this and compromised that, sure, you're right. Or if I dumbed it all down and made it, understandable to somebody with a reading age of 4.5, I'm sure that's correct. And what you'd have, or what I would turn into, is a sort of Qur'an Rick Warren. Isn't going to happen. I didn't choose this path to make that kind of decision. And if it means, we're on our own. Okay, we're on our own. There are Quranic precedents for that. Read it. So I don't care about numbers. And there are a lot of people who only go when the tipping point comes. I don't know how things are going to be in the world, and how long we've got. Maybe we've got 1,000 years, maybe we've got 6 seconds, who knows? God alone knows. But I want to be doing my job if and when that happens. So that's just the way I see it. And the last point on this, if you are a believer, if you look through the Qur'an, just go through and look up all the instances where believers occurs, you'll find out what believer means. Or look at the notes in my own work, which you can find, download for free as ever. But I have references, so you can find that very quickly. If you take that route and decide to go for the highest rewards, the rewards that don't get stolen by Bernie Madoff, and you follow the path of the believer, then you're going to be misunderstood. I think this is another point, because I get people write to me saying, "Oh, so and so said something about you, and it's not right, and blah blah blah." Just let them go. Just let them go. What are you going to do? If somebody is out there, willfully misrepresenting me, then I suppose if it's some serious topic, I'll make a video. So if anybody is interested in what I actually think, they can come and see it. But I don't get into it on a one-to-one level. First of all, it validates people who haven't got anything else going on in their lives. Second, I haven't got the time. And thirdly, it won't make any difference. And fourthly, people forget. People have got the attention span of a fly now. So, it seems very important, but is it, 20, take a slightly longer view on it, and you find that people will forget. But at the time, is it unpleasant being misunderstood and misrepresented? Yeah, sure, it's unpleasant, but God knows. So the verse that I was going to leave you with is 3:179, which reads, "And God will not leave the believers to that to which you incline." And I understand that to mean death. God will not leave the believers to that to which you incline until he distinguishes the bad from the good. So here's an interesting point. There's such thing as bad and good believers. There are darajat in Arabic. There are degrees. Again, if you are a believer, if you have the iman, if it's true in your heart, cultivate it and go for the high rewards. There's plenty out there. To quote words ascribed to Jesus in the so-called Gospels, lift up your eyes and behold the fields, for they are white, already ready for harvest. The harvest is great, the workers are few, and you will find that to be the case. And while I'm on the subject, choose your thing. Choose the thing that you really want to do, because it's going to be a fight anyway. So choose what you're, whether it's you're a teacher, or you're going to support, in terms of work or finances, or you're going to go out and there's a guy out there, he's fantastic. I've mentioned it before, sending books to presents. One brother bought a wholesale lot of books. Another brother is now each month faithfully sending these out to prisons, to people in prison who have got the time and the motivation to read. Nobody told him to do it. It's what he wanted to do. Other people doing all kinds of different things. It's fantastic. Choose it and do it. Not because it helps me. I don't care. I really don't care. Don't help me. Help someone else. But find someone who is really doing something and help them, or start your own thing and make it something. But do it, because when you see, if you are a believer in your soul, right, you're not going to be able to live with yourself unless you're doing it. But it's just, I know how it works, because I am this way myself. Your DNA is constructed this way. If you try to work with the world, if you try to, compromise and, use its terminology, and you'll just grind yourself down into nothing, into powder. There'll be nothing left of you at the end of it. You'll lose this world and you'll lose the hereafter. So my sincere advice to you is use what you've got and do something and be great at it, because you're going to have to fight anyway, and take the flack when it comes. If you wait for everybody to understand, you will never do anything ever. But you will go to hell. And most people don't care. So don't wait for them. It's going to require, and this is part of what being a believer is, it's going to require a point where you, in the dark night of the soul, decide to back what you know to be true in yourself. Right? It's between you and God. Whatever it is you choose to do. And I actually don't care, as long as it's real. But you will find the people who want you to compromise, and you want this, and they want you to... I mean, I'll give you an example from my own life. One of my brothers, he's very dear to me. He's a very intelligent man. He's no fool. But, I was approaching the end of this project, and he believes in this tolerance, sort of expedited tolerance thing that, a lot of, it's really pushed in the West. And but laced with a very particular kind of poison, things like what's it called now? I can't remember, but there are these non-governmental, Soros, I expect, funded things that let people go on these trainings, and you can tell people when they've had it. Anyway, I was coming into the home straight of what I was working on, and he said, yes, but this is great, because then the Christians and the Jews and everyone will understand, and you can get together and you can join these ecumenical things, and all you have to do is everybody gives up some part and blah, blah, blah. I said, look, why would I be interested in, having spent all this time finding truth, why would I be interested in giving it up? And he said, yeah, but this and this and this and this. I said, look, I'm not interested in that. I've got what I've got, and I'm going to go with that now. He said, oh, you should respect what I think. I respect what you think. I said, you don't know what I think. And he went away, and to be fair to him, and he went away, and he came back about 20 minutes later. He said, no, you're right, I don't know what you think. Most of the people you come across won't know what you think, and thinking that you can educate them, you can't. You can't. It says in the Qur'an, they turn away from this Qur'an. They haven't even understood 1/10 of it. You're not responsible for that. You're not responsible for other people understanding you. You're not responsible for trying to pour what you have into their container. They can't hold it. They are systematically and brilliantly brainwashed by a system that has got all of the dark arts behind it. And you just have to accept your limitation. Is it tragic? Yeah, it's tragic. But God guides, or he doesn't guide. So if you are a believer, and I don't think there are that many in the world, I'll be honest, I don't think there are that many. I wouldn't be surprised if I don't know, I don't have any hard figures, but I would imagine that the proportions are probably about the same as they are for psychopaths, which is the other end of the spectrum, like real believers. Maybe 1 in 100, it's something like this. It's very few people. So I'm not saying there aren't a lot of people who will go along with the tide later on. Yes, there are a lot of people who will. But I'm talking about people who, no matter what you throw at them, they're firstly, their understanding that what they're living in is false, and secondly, their appetite for truth will remain. I'll tell you one of the things that encourages me most in the Qur'an. When I read it, it's like we say in Russian, как бальзам по душе. It's like oil trickling across my heart. And it's talking about the garden and the companions of the garden, and it says that they will hear no falsity therein, no falsehood, no lies. Can you imagine? But we have to deal with falsity and lies day in and day out. They're thrown at us. And the vast majority of people will compromise. They will. And until they're told by an authority figure that it's all right not to, or they can maybe live a righteous life because they have permission to do that. But the people who will choose no matter what are very, very few. So if you're one of them, I understand it's tough. But on the other hand, look at the rewards. Maybe not in this life, okay. But what you have is eternal. So I would say work for those things, and be happy for them. And we should celebrate those things and rejoice in them, because what we have, we cannot lose. And what this world has, it cannot keep it. Look at the rich and the famous of history. Just spend an hour on YouTube looking at some of the people who are, old man Rockefeller. Oh yeah, incidentally, David Rockefeller died. 6 heart transplants didn't save him. So, I'm not sort of crying over it. We all go to God, but at the same time, you have the opportunity now that Rockefeller's billions couldn't buy it, which is another day to do the right thing, to have taqwa, to serve God, be right with Him, and build up your treasures in the garden. And I promise you, if you do that, whatever you do today is going to last forever. If that's important to you, you are a believer. Stop beating yourself up. Stop thinking you're a freak. Stop thinking there's something wrong with you, and just put your back into it and go for what you can do. Every day is going to be worth more. Every day, every second of good deeds done with righteous intentions and the fear of God is worth more than Bill Gates' billions. I mean, this is the best that you could possibly look for. So my advice is to concentrate on that and let other people, pay the consequences for the consequences of their decisions. Don't wait for them to catch up, because they won't. And lastly, I'm not saying they ever will, but by your compromising and trying to please this system, if there was ever any hope for the people that you care about, by compromising you kill it. And you will be called upon to stand alone. As we know, that's just how it works. I didn't invent this. I'm just telling you something actually that you already know. So that's all for now. If you're listening on YouTube, you can download my full translation of the Qur'an free using the button in the top right hand corner, or buy the hardback there at 10% less than on Amazon. I also encourage you to sign up for the Qur'anite Plus newsletter on the site to get occasional micro updates. Like if you like, comment if you have something constructive to say, and subscribe to get more each week. And use the link in the drop down below to donate if you would like to help me keep doing this. And remember, this life is short, eternity is long. If you want good trees, plant good seeds.